certified counselor who's doing this for half her life, and therefore see quite a number of people and on for counseling. Right, a little bit of recap from last month. We focused a lot on the suicide, the number of cases that we were having, it was really a very challenging time for lots of people, including us at YHOW, simply because we got a lot of requests and a lot of questions related to suicide, related to family issues, etc., etc. And so we talked a lot about suicide. We talked a lot about the issues that teenagers were going through. And a lot of you posted many questions, and we could not get to all the questions. But one thing that we realized is that all these questions somehow come back to the word family, which means many of you asked, I recall someone asked me, are you saying that suicides were due to the fact that the family was a broken family, or did the family contribute to the teenager's suicide? Now, I'm not the best person, obviously, to answer that question for you, right? But we decided then that obviously, especially Daryl, who's got this interest in family therapy, and sees as a counselor who's very much interested in family counseling, family therapy. That was the other question that he will answer you today. Is family therapy and family counseling the same thing? But before that, we have one question that was, I was going to ask, and true enough, someone popped that question this morning. Is family therapy and family counseling useful? Will it help? Are we open to it? Obviously, somebody say it must be very expensive, so better don't go. But the first question actually comes from Daniel Go. I'm going to allow you, Daniel, to turn on your mic and ask the question directly and give you this opportunity. After all, you're looking dashing today, Daniel. Because of me, yeah. Go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Anyway, so Daryl, yeah, just a quick one here. So, given the Asian mentality, we have a bit of a stigma here. Most may prefer to speak to trusted friends and family as opposed to going for counseling, because the mentality here is that we don't really know the counselor, a stranger, and yet you're paying for a paid service for someone to listen to us and for us to talk to. So the question is, first of all, any advice on how to overcome and break this mold?
Thanks, Daniel. I think there were two questions there, right? One is, there's reluctance to see a therapist. Yeah. And then the second question is around why not go see a friend rather than a therapist, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I do counseling because I could paraphrase your question really well. To begin with, yeah. But anyway, besides that demonstration of skill, let me just jump into the questions, right? I think that in the first place, seeing a friend is never a wrong thing, and I think a lot of counseling is based on a friendship. And research shows that if the counselor and the client does not resonate in a type of friendship, the chance of success is very low. Actually, your number one factor for success in counseling is the relationship between the counselor and the client. Yeah, so friendship is a very powerful thing. And if you're familiar with Carl Rogers' work, one of the things Carl Rogers did is, through research, he showed that deep empathetic listening without a lot of smart intervention, he was able to heal people. Yeah, so there's a lot of power in the friendship. And, definitely, if you have great friends who are willing to listen to you empathetically without invalidating you, which is very important, then it becomes quite powerful. Now, most friends that you go and see will tell you, don't think like that, don't feel like that, right? And that in itself, that is what invalidation is like. So for you to be able to find a friend who's able to go beyond don't think like that and don't feel like that, but allow you to feel what you're feeling and take you to a deeper place, then there's great value in those friendships. Now, in terms of seeing a professional, now, if your car has some problems, you can also try and repair it on your own. Yeah, there's no problem with that. You can go on YouTube and get your hands dirty and start fixing the car. But sometimes the problems are persistent. If you're telling your friends the same problem this year and next year you repeat yourself again, and the year after you're repeating yourself again, then the YouTube mechanic is not helping you. Yeah, so when you are stuck with a problem over a prolonged period of time, that is when you see a professional. And normally, in counseling, a persistent problem may take a very short while to fix. It doesn't take a long time. So I allow me to. So I like to give long answers. Forgive me for that. But allow me to give you one example to drive the point home, right? So I had this couple who came and saw me during the lockdown. Husband is a foreigner, wife is a local Malaysian, right? And they fight every other day almost. Yeah, since the whole lockdown period, right? So they came in because they've been so much at war. And we examine the wall. One of the things we do in therapy is you do sequencing. Sequencing is when you take an issue and you slow it down and you break it down. You see what's happening in the event, right? So when we did the sequencing, what became obvious was, that the wife was fighting intensely for her autonomy, right? And I asked her, so when you're fighting like this, how old are you? She's 31, 32 years old. She says, she's thought about it and she said, oh, I feel like I'm 18 years old, right? And then we went into what happened when you were 18 years old. And, she was one child, protective parents. At some point, she just couldn't take it. Her friends were going for parties. She couldn't do anything with her life, right? They were so busy keeping her safe. And at one point in a younger age, she was molested by her uncle. So, of course, the parents became even more scared, right? They kept her a child. So the only way she could get her freedom to be a teenager and an adult was to fight like crazy with intensity. And so when she is under pressure with the husband, she fights with that same intensity, right? So in therapy, I asked her, who do you want to be, a 18-year-old or a 32-year-old? And that question really forced her to think that she has a choice and she could make a difference, right? And then the husband is interesting. At 14, he had to take care of his father who became depressed because of his job. So he became the peacemaker at home. So he became the father of his father, right? That was his history, right? And so when he's under pressure, he becomes the father of his wife rather than the husband of his wife, right? And that gets the wife back to an 18-year-old mindset. Because now she has a father trying to control her rather than a husband who's a peer. And he told me, look, I tried being a peer, but she went crazy. So I have to take on this father role. I told him this because all your life you've been a father. You don't know how to be a peer. Okay, now that's fair. It's a fair statement. I don't know how to be a peer. So they agreed that he will stop being a father and she will ask herself how old she is when she gets triggered. And 3 weeks later, when they came back, they said, we have a new problem. And I said, what's the new problem? We have stopped fighting. Now we don't know what our relationship is about. Yeah, so because and I asked, how did this change happen? She said, whenever I'm about to fire away, I ask myself, how old am I? And I realize I'm 32, and I realize I don't have to fight. And the husband says, whenever we get into a tough situation, I consciously stop being her father, and I try to be a peer, so she doesn't flare up anymore. And the relationship has changed. Now, coming back to the question of a friend, right? So friends, no matter how intelligent or smart they are, they may not have been trained, because when we enter a room, we immediately look at what roles are you playing, what age did you get stuck, how do we unstuck you, how do we free you from the past sometimes. Both needed freeing from the past, and once they were free, their relationship was fine. At some point, I told them, you don't have to come back for therapy, but they said, we enjoy it so much, can we just continue for a while longer?
Enjoy the not fighting or enjoy coming for therapy? Which one?
See, now what they're doing is they're replacing the fighting with positive things. Sometimes, you have a bad boy and he's attractive. You get married to the bad boy, and the bad boy's identity is a bad boy. So even when he's a husband, he doesn't know how to be a husband. continues to be a bad boy, right? So when you remove something, you have to replace it with something else. And so now we replace it with all that is positive in their relationship. But the point is, it was a single session, and this couple is fantastic. Like, they're very intelligent and want to do well. So, they take it on very quickly. You're freed very quickly. And the problem that they came in with disappears very quickly also. But that quickness only happens with people who have some level of training on what's happening, and they know what to look out for. The same way you take your car to a mechanic, they have some level of training. So they know what to look out for. And they
So,
go out
so,
very quickly. Yeah.
so Darren, if I can get to the end of Daniel's question, is actually what. Correct me if I'm wrong. What you're trying to say is when there are small issues and small problems, yes, do talk to your friends because they may be able to listen to you, help you, understand you, and even give you some suggestions or solutions. But when it warrants, you must be able to recognize when and at what point that you do need assistance from professionals. Is that?
Yeah, yeah. And I think the second part to that, Karen, is the professionals have tools that they can use to solve
Right.
all
Okay.
problems in a quick way. So, sometimes people come in and they've suffered for so long, and you kind of, after about 6, 7 sessions, the suffering ends. And I myself sometimes wonder, why do people enjoy suffering so much, right? They go on holding on to a painful way of doing things for
Is
such a
it
long.
because that they don't want to see a therapist, or is it because the stigma is therapies are very expensive, or is it because too shy? Is it a taboo? What will people say if I see a therapist? What do you think?
I think things are changing. We get a lot of young couples coming in.
Right.
True, the older folks only come in when they, attend a talk like this. Sometimes we do seminars on family therapy and we show videos of family sessions, live videos, and suddenly they realize, oh, it's not so threatening what you do in the room, right? It's not so dangerous. So when we do those kind of workshops, quite often there are one or two families in those workshops that then show up into the session. So there's openness also with the older generation. But I think there's this fear and stigma that's there. But I really think it's changing.
Okay, so you actually mentioned about the older generation having a little bit more openness to coming in and seeing you after some workshops, right? Now let me introduce someone who is not old and who has gone for family therapy and who would like to share something on his experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Dr. Nick Mohammed Azrul. Hi, Dr. Nick.
Hello everyone. Okay, so nice to be
So
here.
Dr. Nick, share with us something because firstly, kudos. You're very brave to tell me that if it helps, you'd like to share an experience you personally had. You're a medical doctor. Um,
Uh-huh.
so even as a medical doctor, you went to see a professional. So obviously, you're very pro counseling. But why did you choose to go and see a counselor or get some help or a therapist? I don't know what you called.
Ah,
Go ahead.
okay. All right. So I think I have experience from becoming the provider and also the receivers end of the counseling. I counsel people as a medical doctor, and also I recognize that it's time for me to get some counseling as well. So as a medical doctor, I think I have that experience working in a psychiatric clinic back in 2012. I was that time I was in the district hospital in Tapa, and we had to handle the psychiatric clinic ourselves. So the psychiatrist is there, and then she will assist us, the medical officers, in counseling the patient. So this is my first exposure as a doctor who provides counseling services to patients as well. That was 2012, and then fast forward to 2014. That was during my previous marriage, and I was heading for trouble, I think, at that time. So like Natalia and Daryl said, there was a time I had to sit down and realize, do I need support from my friends or I need professional advice from a counselor, a certified counselor? All right. So eventually going with friends, family members, they all have very good intentions and basically they are very supportive. But then the problem was not solved. I mean, I was waiting for a divorce that time and I had one child. So I was very worried about my son. In 2014, he was barely one. And I was thinking what kind of life will he be heading to if I'm not so sure myself what is my future afterwards. So then I realized I've already talked with families, with friends, and basically they offered some support, but then I didn't have any input on how to go about it. So that's why I started to look for counselors. So I found one, and during the day of my counseling, I was sitting there, everyone else was female, all female, except for me.
So the statistics show that more female will go ahead for
Yeah.
counselors. Ah, okay.
So it was actually a counselor office in JAIS, Jabatan Agama Islam Selangor. That time they offered free counseling for couples who are having troubles and issues. So I was there, and then everyone else was female, ranging from young to middle age to even old age. And I was sitting beside someone who was in her 40s, and then she was asking me, "You are the only guy here. So what's wrong with this?" And I said, yeah, I wanted to get some advice, but my then wife, now ex-wife, she didn't want to follow to get counseling. So we were quite opposite in that sense, although both of us were medical doctors. So I went there, I got a counselor. I went there for 4 sessions actually. So eventually the counselor was able to guide me and actually determine that I was sad, or I wasn't depressed, but I was sad because of my son. I wasn't really sad about myself at that time. I was quite open to the idea that the marriage is going to be over very soon, and I already accept that. But the counselor was able to pick one important point at the time. He said I was not able to accept that my son will have divorced parents.
Right.
Yeah, because I myself was not from a divorced family, and my ex-wife at that time was not from a divorced family. So both of us came from basically normal nuclear family. So when it came to my son, I was unhappy. I was very sad because of the situation I projected on him. So after the 4th session, the counselor said I seem to be okay now. The relationship was over. The court already declared us separated at that time. So he said, don't worry about your son. Focus on yourself first, because if I'm not right in the head, I did not do this right, it will affect my son in the future as well. So I need to get myself together and move on, accept the fact that I'm separated from my ex-wife, and my son basically is a child of divorce. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's a stigma from the society, but it's not something wrong, and it's not my fault, according to the counselor. So that kind of thinking is something that I needed to hear from a professional. So that was my first experience, but I went there myself. Then fast forward to 2019, this is when I started joining Medicare actually. So my son was already 5.5, entering 6 years old. And then I started to bring him to my house because I was in 2016, I was remarried to someone else, and subsequently we had another child. So my son from previous marriage now has a sister. So he started coming over to our house, but I realized that I don't really know this boy quite well, even though he's my son. But I've never had him in my house, all this while I visited him at his mother's house. So I was thinking, is he okay? Is he going to cry or not happy being with me? So that all those self-doubts came over me again. And then my son shows a bit of conflicting sides. Occasionally, he said he didn't want to go back to mom. He wanted to stay over and play with sister. And occasionally, he said he wanted to go back as soon as possible. So I couldn't figure out what is happening to my son. So I decided that time, after discussing with my wife, we need to see a psychiatrist or psychologist or whoever that can help us figure out what is going on with our son. So I was looking around. It was quite limited option for me because I only got my sons on second and fourth weekends. So government hospitals, they are seeing patients on weekdays. They don't have any sessions in the weekend. So our options was private psychiatrist. So we were able to find one who's working on Saturdays. So I started bringing my son to see him, to see her. She was in one of the, she was in Prince Court actually. So that was that because this is the first time I'm bringing my 6-year-old son to see a stranger. I don't know whether he's going to be able to open up to a stranger or he will close up and we didn't have anything to go on about. And then the psychiatrist did say that, okay, for this session, I needed to see him alone first, then all of you as a family for family therapy, family counseling.
Did it help?
Yes.
Did this whole session help?
Yeah, actually, we had 2 sessions with this psychiatrist. My son went in first. He was there for 40 minutes. He actually was able to bond well with the psychiatrist. And then we went in as a family, me, my current wife, and my son. So you were able to explore the issues and discuss the dynamics between us because my son is quite open to this psychiatrist. And unfortunately, he was able to say a lot of things that we didn't even know he was thinking about.
Right. So basically, the psychiatrist had helped him to open up, and you did you get the answers you wanted?
We received answers, but it's not really what we expected to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, but it actually gives us an insight of what his mother is saying to him. So, and then that's why the conflict is there because he's also wanted to jaga his mom. He wanted to jaga me. And then
Right. Yeah, I think we have quite a few questions related to this, Dr. Nick. So I'm going to, divert back to the counselors. But thank you for being, sharing this story and being very pro to say and you recognized when you needed help, and obviously, you seeked the help, and hopefully, the kids have settled in between you and the ex-wife. Yeah. So
it helps a lot.
Yeah, that's it. But Daryl, one of the questions that was posted yesterday online, and one of the questions that I asked, which I didn't, ask Sangeeta, but I would like quick answers from you guys. Not that Daryl gives quick answers, but never mind. Is this, when we talk about family, are we talking about just immediate family, or are we, when we talk about coming for family therapy, do we bring aunts, uncles, grandmother, grandfathers, I don't know, babysitter, I don't know. Because the more people you bring in, the longer the sessions are going to be, right? So some of us were talking about it. How do you see this?
So I jump in first, yeah. So normally when you see the family, you bring in mom, dad, and children, yeah. So that is quite common. Occasionally, you bring in grandparents too.
Okay.
It can be very helpful, especially if the grandparents are living with the family. Because what happens is, I have this situation, for example, where the grandparents brought up the grandson.
Right.
And the wife and husband stays in the grandparents' house. And then suddenly MCO happened and the mother now is at home. And she no longer approves of the way the child is being brought up.
You're talking about Sangeeta here, right?
Oh, is it? Yeah, so in such a case, the grandparents' help in the room becomes very important to find an answer. So grandparents are always invited in, and sometimes there's like a gap in the story where you need the
Right.
grandparents in. But we have our center is called Endorphy Family Therapy Center, named after Professor Endorphy. And one of Professor Endorphy's famous cases, and we have it on video, is there was this girl who was anorexic, yeah, and she was, I think she was 14 or 15 years old, just skin and bones. And, and one of the things you do in therapy is you exaggerate the problem, right? You amplify the problem. So Professor Endorphy told her, oh, you are trying to kill yourself slowly. You never evade the issue, right? A slow death is what you're looking for. He said, yes. And then he said, okay, then let's have your funeral. No, before you die, it's better to have your funeral, he tells her. And he says, tell me who you want to invite for your funeral, and we'll do a session with all of them. And the room, I think, had about 30 people, in the session, which was the girl's funeral, right? And in the session, as she listened to how different people felt about her, imagining if she went through with what she was doing, something shifted for her. And that's the end of therapy. She started eating again, and she recovered. And I think today she's about 30 something years old. And she had come to a conference to present on as a client.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a very beautiful story, but it's done with 30 people. I think the last session I shared about somebody who's suicidal and her family was not available, but she had 6 good friends. So we can bring the 6 good friends into the room and do sessions. I think as human beings, we need to feel there's someone out there for us. And that is probably the most powerful healing agent, that sense that I'm loved, there's someone there who loves me, that my life matters, I'm important to someone. And that gives tremendous power and validation. And in family therapy, we never limit. If we need to call 10 people into the room, we call them. If it's just friends we can find, we bring them. If there's a supportive auntie, we're happy to have them in the room. Yeah, as long as the people there have a meaning and have a role to play, we bring them in.
Right. So having said that, I'm going to throw this question to Sangeeta. Sangeeta, you don't really see that many people. You like to see, or I don't know, do you mostly see individuals? Correct me if I'm wrong. And do these individuals' problems sometimes actually derive from family issues?
Yeah. So I mostly see individual, and as per request, sometimes I see family. And some of my clients, right, what they do is it derives from family. And sometimes, there's no point looking at the client when they only spend like an hour a week with us, and then the rest of the hours with the family, which is like toxic, they are actually contributing to that well-being, the ill well-being of my client. So that's why I invite them to come to sessions. The session is not about blaming or anything. It's about inviting them to sit and to express. And especially parents, that I have few cases, youth, where the parents say, don't tell what's happening in the family to anyone. And to break that ice, because they have issues, and the parents say, don't tell family problem out. So it takes a few sessions for them to open up and say, my parents don't really want me to talk about family problems. Can you say that? So it can be difficult for counselors, right, to look at this. But again, once they are more open, once the parents come in, because there's no specific structure that, okay, the father come in first or the mother come in first. Whoever willing to be on board into that journey of recovery will always, welcome. And then slowly the change will start from within. And then you can see people around you will change. There's no point telling, no, my child is so stupid, nothing much can do, so lazy, please do something with them. where we do some intervention, yes, okay, we build the trust, we build the relationship, but once they are back, they are in the same environment.
Right.
So that's where I do a lot of behavior modification. I do work with them. So that not only I'm done in the session, I'm also with them, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, do
Right.
some engaging work.
Okay, but both of you actually see individuals and also you see families. Of course, Daryl probably see a little bit more than Sangeeta does, and Sangeeta probably see a little bit more of individuals than Daryl does. Now, having said that, my question is, when you do see individuals and you say bring in the family, how often do these individuals actually invite the families to come in? Is it easy? Is it difficult? Simple question. Sangeeta, is it easy? Is it difficult that when you say bring your family in or invite your family in, they say okay and the family turns up? Is that easy or?
Okay, it depends, because again, if the family come, right, the first thing they will say, it's all the child.
But do they come?
They come. They come.
come.
But it's a different dynamic already. It's about blaming the child, exposed to bad friends, bad environment, blah, 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 and the blaming starts. So,
So you don't really have a problem of asking the individuals you see to invite the family members.
yeah.
So they're open to it, to invite the family members.
Mom normally easy lah than that.
Okay, so yeah, I think Nyam, you see, you are quite agreeing on that. We'll go to you after this. Daryl, what say you, Daryl? Easy or difficult or?
I think the key is in insisting.
Okay.
Give up too easily.
Okay.
I think counselors who give up too easily is shortchanging the client.
Right.
I had a mother who's taken care of her autistic son, and the son was 21 years old. And, so this is very well documented in family therapy, right? So where, sometimes when you have a son that has a disability or a daughter who has a disability, the mother becomes overly protective, and after some time, the father gets pushed out.
Right.
And this also happens with any birth. So a lot of marriages fall apart when the child is born, because the mother bonds with the child in a special way, and the father feels, hey, where am I here? And they start focusing on a career or on golf or sometimes on their secretary. You don't know what they focus on, but the focus goes elsewhere.
I like the diversion into secretary. Okay, never mind.
So those things happen, right? So in this case, the mother was overly focused on the child. So I told her, look, tell the father to come here. And father has never followed for anything all these years, she says. Then I said, okay, ask him to give me a phone call. I'll take a call from him. So when the father called, he did call. And then I told him, hey, for boys, fathers are very important. He said, I agree with you. And then in the conversation, at the end of the conversation, no, I'll definitely come. And he came,
Oh, right. Okay.
And if you insist strong enough and you're convinced that the family is important for healing, people get it and they come. Now, when individuals come with couple problems, especially when husbands come in and their problem is with the wife, I've not been as successful convincing them to bring their wife. With the husbands, in the cases I'm thinking about, the husbands are quite terrified of their wives, and they have had enough and they don't know what to do anymore. But they struggle to take that extra step to invite them in. So I do have an exception in the work, and that is the area of exception. But outside that, I've been fairly successful in bringing in the family.
Okay, so it's actually quite good to hear this, because I'm at the back of my mind, I'm actually thinking people are very reluctant to go for counseling. People are very reluctant to see counselors, like expose. It's like basically telling your whole private story out there, and I think one of the things that I'd like to ask on behalf of everybody is, this wave of pandemic, the past 15 16 months that we have been facing, right? How do you guys, you see people, you see all sorts of problems, and from a social and a psychological point of view, right, with this pandemic, with this lockdown, how do you actually advise us, right? Or how would you actually lead us to effective well-being? Basically, how do we move on? We as normal people, we are not counselors, we don't have the expertise. How do we move on from here? We don't even know. As far as most of us are concerned, this is not over. The pandemic is not over. We are in lockdown. And leading to that, Daryl, I think you also want to share, because one of the questions that popped up is, now, as it is, we're already facing a very tough situation with the pandemic. We are in lockdown, psychologically affected, emotionally affected, mentally affected, physically we were also affected, and the social impact of everything that's going on with us is actually very, very heavy. On top of that, to add on a personal point of view, many of us lost friends. I personally lost friends and parents of friends to COVID. Again, you know, the other emotional thing that we're having is we can't reach out, we cannot hug people, we cannot say goodbyes, we cannot cross borders or even, you know, interstate. How do we actually deal with this? If you have some, I know it's not going to solve a lot of things, but at least some sort of comfort, some sort of advice to us, please, guys. Daryl, you want to go first?
Okay, maybe I go first. Maybe I take the second question first because it's more personal to me.
It's about the death, right?
So, Karen and Sangeeta know that my mom just passed away on Monday, right? And she actually did die of COVID. Yeah, she had prolonged dementia for many years, and you know, and then she got COVID and she passed away after 14 days. Yeah, so I can share the the pain of many people, and I think to some extent we were very lucky because she passed away now. If she passed away a month ago, I think the situation was far worse because the hospitals were overwhelmed and you know there was very little attention given. But in our case, actually, they were very kind. You know, they gave us every day. I'll call the hospital, and they actually would get a doctor, and they would give you an update on what's happening. And they were extremely generous. Huh? She was in HKL. They were very generous with the information. And then as she started to get critical, they will allow you a few minutes of video call. You know, and then they go from bed to bed. And
Right.
during the time of the video call, you know, the grandchildren, myself, you know, the people to whom she mattered most were able to kind of say their last piece, you know. In that sense, there was a lot of closure, though, you know, the gaps are very small, 10, 12 minutes, that's all they give
Right.
you, right? But over a couple of days, it kind of amounts up to something.
Okay.
And then when she passed away, you know, of course, you know, the process is very quick, right? She passed away today and you have to bury her tomorrow, basically cremate. So, you know, it kind of happens everything very quickly. But what we did was, as a family, we invited friends on Zoom and kind of prayed together for her, you know.
Okay.
And the first night we had about 30 people. The second night we had about 80 people on Zoom, you know. And on the second night, what we did is different people shared stories of their life with her, you know, and she was a very generous woman. She took care of many people's kids. You know, basically, she was a mother figure for many women, especially who didn't.
Daryl, this was when she was still alive.
Yeah, when she was still alive before the
Okay.
dementia, right?
Okay.
She was she was a mother figure. So, you know, a lot of them shared. So we spent a long time on Zoom, giving people space to talk about her, what she meant to them. And it was very healing for the family, you know, for me especially. And it worked as a ritual, yeah. And, you know, and I told them, look, this is not over yet, you know, we have cremated her, but we'll take her home to Penang because Penang is home and bury her with the husband who passed away 7 years ago, you know, so they can share a grave and have their fun together and fight again, you know. So that opportunity that's given to them. But I think what's important here is a couple of things that I think we did right. One is you never mourn alone. If you're
Right.
in pain, share it with others. Give the pain away to others.
Right.
Then it becomes more bearable. And I think the Zoom calls help. So, you know, if people are losing loved ones, then share the pain, make it visible, allow others to take part in that pain. The other thing we did was a lot of reframing. Reframing is a a counselor's language. Reframing is when you look at the situation and you see the positive rather than the negative. My mother was going into the last stage of dementia. If you all know dementia, you'll be unable to eat, you'll be tube fed, you'll be lying on a bed waiting to die. And that's a very long, prolonged way of dying. So in a way, COVID in 14 days ended suffering that would take 9 months. So if you kind of keep that as a perspective, it's also easy to kind of let go. And I think it's really important to have rituals to mark the end. And today we can't have the standard rituals, right? Which we have in normal times, but you can create your own rituals using Zoom or Teams. This idea of going back to Penang when the borders are open, so that the people who missed the funeral can come together and still celebrate her life one more time is also a ritual. And I think with grief, you have to mark the end. And that's very important, symbolically mark the end. Because when you mark the end, then you can say this is finished and I can move into the next stage of life. And I think the hardest part about COVID today is we cannot mark the end properly. So we need to develop creative ways to mark the end. Funerals are a way of marking the end. And if you can't have a funeral, you can create your own. So that is on the second question. Maybe I go to Sangeeta first and then I can get back to the first.
Sangeeta also lost somebody, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And so you've got something to share there as well, even if it's on a very brief way, yeah?
So I'm sharing the first question or second question.
You can take either. I think we are open to it, right? Because
I think I just share what is it lah.
Yeah, share both.
For those out there, sometimes you feel that you are not contributing or what can you do. I think the best way is just be present. Okay, just be present, be there. And I know sometimes people can talk and share and sometimes it doesn't make sense to you, but it does make a lot of sense to them, right? Be supportive and all that. I've lost family members, I've lost clients. I think the most, what you call this? The one that I lost is one of the client who this is the highlight because he's an expat and he was positive COVID, so he's in the hospital while the wife and the daughter COVID positive, but at home.
Right.
The wife can't take it, and then she just jumped down the building with the daughter. So that's a very great impact because you're seeing the person in the hospital, and then you're communicating with the home country, and then you are communicating with the close friend. So there's a lot of emotions. And I have to call the hospital daily because we speak the same language, bahasa and all these things. Right. So it overwhelmed, and sometimes it's difficult to let go.
Right.
So sometimes you see me, I'm quiet, or I don't respond, or I just shut down. It's because it's still playing. When you already build that relationship with someone, sometimes it's hard. When simultaneously there's a few occasions with the similar theme of death, right? It can carry a lot of weight. So what you need to do, if you need to take the time off, if you need to, isolate yourself for a while from whatever that is going on, it's fine. But remind yourself you need to go back. Okay? Because if you isolate too much, then you go into different mental challenges. So you need to be mindful, be there, and look at your day as, I'm breathing, I'm able to help others, that's it. Don't put a lot of pressure because nothing is in your control when it comes to all these things, right? When people come and see you, they just like to talk to you or they know they can trust you or share, most precious information with you, right? But don't put it too much on your shoulder. Even us counselors, we do have all these things. We do go, we do have burnout, emotionally go up and down, but end of the day, we know how to manage it. And to those who might not have those skills, just reach out, and it's okay to be not okay. So I think I wrap up both right.
Yes, you did. Yes, thank you. So yeah, so I mean, I hear you. I hear you in that sense that a lot of people are saying like we're not good, we're not coping, don't know when this is going to be over. It's very difficult. You can't go out. Okay, in some of our cases, it's even like you get withdrawal symptoms because you can't meet friends, you can't have coffee. Even that becomes one thing on the list that I would like to do when this whole episode is gone. But I think these are all things that we jot down. If you ask what's bothering, I mean, these are the things that you jot down. But Daryl, coming back to that first question, from a psychological point of view, from an emotional point of view, what do we do actually now while waiting, hoping that we are able to go back to a little bit of normalcy? I'm not saying full. I don't think we're going to go back to full normalcy, but at least a little bit back to normalcy. What can we do? What can you tell us?
I think to begin with, a lot of Malaysians are suffering, and the suffering that they are experiencing is abnormal. The other day I went to buy lunch, and this man comes up to me, and I assume he needs money. So I give him money, and he says, "No, I don't want money. I want beras and Milo for my kids." And that is the level of desperation on the street. I think if you have a bit of a bank account, you can go on for a while.
Right.
There are many people who are really, really struggling.
Yes.
And if they don't go out to work, they have no income. And I think COVID hits the poor the most. And I think
Definitely.
we must be mindful of that. But assuming that, we are still going on, some of us still have an income, then I think a lot of our problems are psychological. I think because we do some work with the PPR flats in Kota Damansara, a lot of their concerns are just figuring out how to live each day. Yeah? But then there's a bunch of us who can live each day, and then there's a challenge. And I think the real thing is, a lot of what COVID brings up has already been there. COVID is not bringing something new.
New, right.
Yeah, the governments who do a lot of couple they will always tell you 6-7 years ago. No one said March 2020. No one has said that. Not one couple has said that. Right? These are old problems, but now the spotlight is on the problem. And I think it's the same for individuals also. This is an old problem, but then there's a spotlight. And one analogy I like to give is, if you have fire and you throw styrofoam into the fire, or you throw sand into the fire, or you throw wood into the fire, or you throw iron into the fire, you'll notice the sand, the wood, the iron, the styrofoam behaves very differently. Right? The styrofoam just disappears, the wood starts burning brightly for a while, then it disappears, the sand puts off the fire, and the iron takes on features of the fire. No? And I think to some extent what COVID is the fire, right? And we are being thrown into it. And what it's doing is it's showing us our substance. So it can be a very renewing time if we choose to allow it to be renewing. And, I mentioned Carl Rogers earlier. He has a very nice concept where we have a given self and a chosen self, right? The given self is who we have evolved, sometimes unconsciously. And when the fire is burning so bright, it's easier for us to see the given self clearly. And we have a chance to choose the person we want to be. And I think as the fire is burning, we have a lot of opportunity to recreate ourselves and say, I want to be something different. But it's important to look at the fault lines deeply and say, look, what are things that need to change? So I think COVID is a bad thing. It causes a lot of problems. But if you want to see the positive part of it, it forces us to stay home and look at ourselves in the mirror a lot more. And I was talking to a friend who's a priest, and he said many people through COVID has rediscovered their faith. Yeah, because they have more time at home. And
Lot reflection, huh?
yeah, more reflection, So it is a time for renewal. We don't know when the fire is going to stop, but the fire shows us whether we are made of sand, made of iron, made of wood, or made of styrofoam. And we have a choice, move from the given self to some self that is chosen, so that when COVID reappears, ends, a new person may reappear through the fire. Yeah, I think that would be this is more a personal reflection rather than
I think it actually make, we can summarize from basically what the two of you said, whether you are going through it yourself, or you are watching the rest of the people around you, the difficulties that people face. And I think a lot of us are, we keep saying we have to count our blessings, because there are people out there who are worse off, like what you mentioned just now, Daryl, even asking for the simple basic food. And believe me, I have seen it, and we have heard about it, we've talked about it, we've tried to help. Some of us here have been doing, food banks and things like that to help. And it's like a never ending story, because again, like you said, the fire has not been put out. It's only a matter of it just, one day it's a bit bigger, another day it's a little bit smaller, and that's about it. But those who are facing things like whether it's what Sangeeta mentioned just now, I think it's all about reaching out and trying to have conversations with people, the people that you trust. And if you need to take a break, then yes, do take a break, but not just too long, because you don't know what's going to happen. If it that's a good reminder for me, because I occasionally go on this break, and I tend to think this is a very nice, let's not talk to people. So I think this is a reminder now to say, something's not very, very right about doing that. Now, coming back to one of the popular questions that we've had when we talk about family therapy, family counseling, is the involvement of not the immediate family, but the involvement of aunts and uncles. And I'm an aunt, and most of you guys are aunts and uncles, and the involvement that we play in the family, and especially if there are issues or trouble in that sense, do we contribute to that trouble? And sometimes I must say that some aunts and uncles do. And how do you handle this? Because one of the questions posted from the last session was, how do you deal with siblings, right, who probably live in the same house and who are tougher on your kids than you actually are? Or basically what I think the question is also trying to say is, when somebody else snaps the cane even harder than you, probably the parents probably do. They're a little bit more tougher on your kids. They see it, they call it out as it is. And what do you say to these siblings, or these aunts and uncles, or even relatives, quite close friends, who have a say on your kids, or tell your kids off because they feel that's something that they can do, they should do, and they have a right to do? Either of you. You both have 3 boys, come on. You both have 3 boys.
Yeah,
I go first, huh? Go first.
Yeah.
Okay, Daryl, go first.
Yeah. So, I think one of the key parts of family therapy is teaching the couple to put a fence around the family, even when you stay with your extended family. Yeah.
Right.
So a husband that is more married to his mother will have a problematic marriage.
I just wanted to ask you, Daryl, couple who name themselves mommy, daddy, ayo.
Yeah. So
you mean they refer themselves as mommy and daddy in the household?
Yes.
Right. Yes, we hear a lot of them. Yes, we hear a lot of that.
So one of the fathers of family therapy is a Argentinian man called Silvado Minuchin. And his big contribution into family therapy is he helps family put structure in place. Yeah? So structure in place means father and mother can discipline the children, but siblings cannot discipline the children. You know why? Research shows you If a sibling disciplines their fellow siblings, the relationship is very damaged and it's very hard to repair the relationship. If a sibling plays the parental nurturing role, it still works very well. Yeah, so there are certain things through research you find that it can work and cannot work. And something like discipline actually is in the exclusive domain of the parents. Whenever it goes beyond the boundary of the parents, it's actually extremely damaging for the child. And when parents work with us, for example, we tell them straight away, as long as you're in therapy, no corporal punishment. Yeah, we kind of go down that path. So we are kind of we challenge the Asian norms of caning also, because we want people to find different ways to manage behavior. But the basic idea within family therapy is the discipline belongs to parents. Yeah, and the child has more confidence in a parent who can protect them. And you can always take them home and discipline them for what they've done wrong. You know, I'm not saying parents play a nurturing role and a disciplining role.
Okay.
But discipline part belongs
To the parent.
to the parents. Yeah. And parents also need to know how to put a fence. You know, in Malaysia, a lot of families live with their mother-in-laws, father-in-laws, and all that. And sometimes you also need to put a fence around your family from the mother-in-laws and father-in-laws, because too much intervention, you know, it's already complex trying to grow a family.
You can see Sangeeta laughing. She'll tell you why later.
Yeah, it's already very, very complex. And if the husband and wife don't learn how to put that fence, they add complexity.
Right.
You know, and this complexity is not worth managing. And more often than not, most couples don't know how to manage the complexity. And that is when we sometimes bring in the parents, the grandparents into the session to develop some sort of a contract on, you know, how we will interact, you know. And sometimes parents don't realize the children are grown up. So they continue to be the father of the father and the father of the grandchild.
Right.
Yeah, and when the roles get confused, then the child also gets confused and the family gets confused.
Yes.
So putting in the correct structure within a family is part of therapy. And when the structures are confused, you know, you get problems. And there's enough data and science to tell you some structures work, some structures don't work.
Don't. Right.
So if you just follow the science, you should come out okay.
Yeah, I know, because you know, one of the things before I go to Sangeeta is to tell you, you know, I mean, this is a real life, right? So I will tell you that sometimes, as you know, to be fair to aunts, uncles, you know, I speak for myself, of course. Here, I've got niece on online listening to this anyway. It's very difficult when they can't talk to their parents. They come and talk to you and they say things like, "Don't tell the parents," and here you are stuck. Now, do you tell the parents? Or do you not tell the parents? You tell the parents because you feel it's the parents' job, like what you say, to discipline the kid. It's not your job, it's not your place, right? But if you don't tell the parents and you try to do it, at least you solve the problem of the child, in this sense, the teenager or the kid. And if you do tell one, the problem may not even be solved. Two, they lose their trust in you and they are not going to trust. So I'm thinking here, at least if you talk to me, at least somebody solves your problem. If you don't trust me anymore, you're not going to talk to your parents. Now you don't have me, you don't have parents. Dua-dua pun tak ada. So how?
You know, I think you have to decide what is your role. Are you a friend or are you the therapist?
Okay.
And if you're the friend, then you can link up with the child, right?
The aunt.
The aunt, yeah. So as an aunt, you're a friend and you link up with the child, that's fine.
Right.
But in therapy, we cannot collude. This is
Okay.
collusion, right? So, you know, especially in couple counseling, we always tell them to set up a WhatsApp where all three are there. Because one of the partner behind the session will always come to you and say, you know this, I want to share special news with you,
Right.
special information with you. Now, if you collude with one of the two, then the therapy goes haywire. So in therapy, and that's why, you know, like Professor Endorfi, he never does individual sessions. He does the whole family together. You know, when it comes to affairs, he will be honest and say, look, this is adult business. We will take it separately.
Right.
Outside that, you do the session together, right? Because there's no chance for collusion. You're very neutral. You belong to everyone. And there's no one who has a special.
I can tell you a lot of people are facing the same issue as aunts and uncles, right? Especially if you are the nice or the good or the generous aunt and uncle that they go to. You are always facing this problem like, please don't tell my parents, but this is my problem. Now you are stuck. So sometimes better not to listen than to go and listen and then be stuck. But then again, if you don't listen, they are like, where do we go to? So I think it's a catch-22 situation.
Yeah. But I think if I think a lot of children don't have parental figures also, so they need to go out and look for someone,
Right.
And having a positive adult role model is so important for children, and if someone can provide that positive adult role without pretending to be the parent,
Right.
I think the parents are still the parents and they have certain rights
Yes.
that are always greater than any aunt or uncle or friend.
Of course.
But if they can provide that nurturing, positive relationship, I think it is helpful in the end.
I think it's okay with some boundaries, some lines not to
You need
cross.
the boundaries, but
Yeah. Sangeeta, what do you have to say? You've got 3 boys. You live with your mother-in-law. Or your mother-in-law lives with you, not you live with your mother-in-law.
Yeah, Daryl already said, have clear boundaries, all right? Because definitely, the aunt, the in-laws would want to be in because they feel that they might, in their mind, maybe they feel that they are out of that family setting, that unit, and they want to contribute. It can be that's one of the reasons. But always have clear boundaries and always talk to your kids. That's very important. And discipline parents. You have all the rights to discipline and also to protect your child. You don't allow the discipline from someone else because then it will be a total different game, And constant communication, no matter what. Okay, if I like, I don't like. If I have, if I know that it might hurt an individual or I might hurt my child, I will just say that, but in the proper manner so that they understand from where I'm coming from. Because I'm a tough mom. I make sure, and my child will tell me, what, when I have kids, right, I'm going to follow how you treat us. Because now they do most of the work. So that is why, sometimes for mothers especially, when your child start to compare you with other moms, okay, because my children sleeps by 9:30, and there are parents who allow their child to sleep at 11, 12. Then for me, if you want, you go and stay in that house. You don't stay here. You like it, you need to follow my rules, and these are my rules. And I explain to them why they need sleep, why they need rest, why it's important, why they need to wake up in the morning so early and all this thing. So it's not a 1 day, 2 day explanation.
Right.
It's been there since the time they understand what I'm saying until now they are teenagers. So it's constant reminder, constant telling or showing and expressing how I feel and let them express how they feel so that we are keep on moving. And boys, sometimes they don't really speak out, right? Yours, Daryl, speak
I
out.
see. Don't need to ask Daryl. I can see Tyler and Yam going yes. So obviously they are answering you on behalf of the boys club. So they don't really listen. Okay, so we found that one out. But before we end, I think there's a very important question that somehow relates to quite a few of us, me included. I just like your opinion on this. Two people asked me the same question about family units, and they want to know from a psychological point of view, what's your take when you actually ostracize or rather cut ties with your own family members due to whatever the reason is. Obviously, in some cases, it's hurt, upset, don't want, ungrateful, don't want to have anything to do with. And this is your immediate family, meaning there could be siblings. Most I think in both the cases, the questions came in from people who have sibling issues and who no longer now speak to the siblings. Is this good? Is this not good? There are two schools of thought here. One is to say you're going to regret it if you do this and continue, because at the end of the day they have the famous phrase of blood is thicker than water, therefore siblings really matter. The other school of thought is to say that, look, it's for my own mental sanity, I'm happy with my decision, let it be, I do not want to have anything to do with this sibling again. Your take on it?
This is a big and important question. I don't know. Yeah.
I need the answer, Daryl. I'm involved.
So the psychological term for it is called cut off. So you cut someone off.
Yep.
You cut the relationship. Yeah. So now the person who did the most amount of research, and I suggest you all go on the internet and look at his work. It's a person called Bowen. If you Google Bowen family therapy, you'll get a lot of information.
Bowen.
What is Bowen? Bowen.
Okay.
Yeah. So you kind of look at it, you can get a lot more information because this is a very complex topic. Now, generally in therapy, when there's cut off, especially with parents, we try to repair the cut off. Because what happens with cut off, especially with parents, because they are very significant individuals. When a child is a child, parents are like godlike figures. And if you cut off this link, it does leave a very strong vacuum. So a son who had an over-involved, controlling mother who rejects the mother, goes away, doesn't establish contact, sometimes, ends up, wanting to be close to women, but when the woman is close, they want to run away, and the energy of the cut-off continues to play
Right.
on them psychologically. And until you make some level of peace with the cut-off, it's very hard to go on. And some level of peace doesn't mean you mend the relationship, but you find a settlement rather than a cut-off.
Okay.
And an example of a settlement is, there's this David who supervises my work, very old. He's the one who introduced family therapy to me some years ago. Yeah, and this is a story from David. So if I don't tell it accurately, I ask for forgiveness. But basically, there was this boy who came from a broken family, and the father was absent. And he got progressively more angry at 16 because he broke things and was very violent. The mother threw him out, right? So he grew up without the mother, and there was something always unsettled in him. So in his late 20s, when he went for therapy, as part of his healing process, he went back to reconcile the relationship. But the mother was not interested to reconcile. So they made a basic agreement that on his birthday, he will visit her, and they will have dinner together. And that was that. And he found that one single event, one concrete reconciliation, helped him heal and move forward. So when you cut off parents, relationships are energy. Yeah? If you cut off something that is too significant, something goes wrong. And we found that a lot in therapy, and repairing that cut off, not in making them best friends. Repairing means you have a peaceful settlement rather than a runaway settlement. It's very important. Now with siblings, haven't seen literature, so I'll give you my personal opinion. This part is personal opinion, right?
Please do.
Because I'm not sure. I've not really looked at it. So from a personal opinion standpoint, I don't think it will be as severe as with parents. Yeah, but I think there's still a loss there. And you don't have to become best friends, but you need to have a relationship that is peaceful, I think, or some level of peace can be maintained. And I think that will settle something. I think basically if you're feeling restless about the condition of the relationship, that restlessness is a sign that we can do something with it. If you feel settled,
right,
you're not triggered, you're not emotionally heightened, then okay, then there's peace. That's okay.
So it's okay if you're at peace not to have a relationship that you wanted out in the first place.
Yeah.
Can I have a recording of this?
But this is a personal view, right? With
Right.
siblings, right? I'm not too sure. You asked an important question. I need to go and do research and find
Yeah,
out.
yeah, let me know, okay? Because there are two people, I think I forwarded one question and another question came in, and I myself am interested to know this because, I have a stake.
Purely
I have a
personal view on sibling relationship, but the parental one, there's a lot of work. You look at both
right.
work, you'll find that generally family therapy will try and find reconciliation.
Okay.
Yeah. Reconciliation doesn't mean you become best friend and go on holidays.
Yes,
Reconciliation
obviously,
means
yes.
we have some sort of a peaceful settlement.
Yeah. Sangeeta, are you there? Yeah, I think the main question here was, I mean, I think there are lots of people or few people that I know of who are actually having severed the relationship with their own family members, and I mean, obviously this has hit a state where enough is enough, and therefore there must have been some hurt, there must have been something that had triggered this whole incident of where you find it's better off not having a relationship with your own sibling than having one for the sake of having a relationship. So Sangeeta, Daryl has answered. Would you like to add anything before we close? No. So yeah, you and your siblings are okay. Yeah, so I know that you met all of them, so I can say yes. She controls all the siblings, so they are all fine. Yeah, but having said that, it's I think what you said, Daryl, I'm going to hold on to it and answer to whoever, and we will play this recording because I see quite a few requests coming in. If it's how you feel about it and what kind of emotions that come up, and are you settled or unsettled with the fact that you are not having any relationship with your own siblings, and that probably answers the question.
So the best test, Karen, is when you meet the sibling, do you get worked up? If you get worked up, then you need to do work.
Okay.
Worked up, then you're settled.
I don't know, I don't even they are there but you don't see them.
Yeah. So
Then
if
it's
you happen
okay.
to bump into them, would you go crazy? And if you go
Ah,
crazy, then you
okay.
have a problem. Yeah,
Okay, that's a good, yeah, that's another good
that's the
indicator. Okay.
indicator. Okay, so
Yeah, I think that's also a checkpoint now in my
yeah,
head. So by now everybody here already know that I got probably
because cut off is I avoid you. So I'm
yes.
fine because I avoid you. That's not the same
Correct.
as when I meet you, I'm still okay. I don't have to be your best friend, but I'm still okay.
Yes. Definitely. I think the cordial, you can be in the same room and then not just talk to the person and just
Yeah. Same room and your blood pressure shouldn't shoot through the roof.
okay. Yes, perfect indicator.
Bring that meter and check it.
Yeah, perfect indicator. Yes. Okay. Right. Thanks, Daryl and Sangeeta, and thanks everyone for joining us again on our Significant Thursday. And we'll be back again in September. We'll let you know what's the topic. If you do have something that you want us to, source for you or find someone to share some info, for you, we are more than happy to bring Significant Thursday to you live again next month. And until then, thank you once again, and do follow us on Facebook and also on Instagram and also on our LinkedIn page, which is actually very, very active. So thank you once again. And Daryl, if you have the chance, you should read Tyler's story this week. It's quite a story that really touches your probably. I'll send it to you anyway.
Send it to me.
Yeah, I'll send it to you because you're not very active on LinkedIn. Anyway, thank
Not
you once
very
again,
active,
Doctor. Thank you once again, Dr. Nick. And if you guys want to get in touch with Daryl, please let me know because I'm his not paid secretary only for a few days in this week. Other than that, you know where to find me. You know how to find Dr. Sangeeta. So on behalf of Yes and Health on World, here's saying goodbye, and we'll see you again next month.